more people get into video games for the very first time. Whether it be because of a brand new IP that piques their interest, or a breakout hit in a long-running franchise, more and more people are buying consoles, playing video games, and sharing their experiences online. Yet video games also have decades' worth of history, with many monumental series now coming up on their 30th or even 40th anniversaries. As gamers, we are living in a historic time in the industry. We've now reached a mainstream audience and are making more money than movies and television combined. But with this also comes a need to preserve this history. Understanding this history enlightens our current experiences with video games and helps us appreciate how far we've come. This desire to highlight the past and help beginners and intermediate players understand the history of games is part of why I started the Gaming Essentials collection. So for today, I'd like to discuss my vision for this collection and the criteria I use to determine if a game truly is essential. The first factor I look at when deciding if a game is essential is accessibility. Is the game easily available for most modern gamers? And can a newcomer pick up the game and play through it on their own without needing too much outside assistance? Thankfully, many developers and publishers are realizing the need to make their games more available and are putting their games on modern consoles and PCs. Through ports or remasters, more and more players can play video game classics on the platform of their choice without having to hunt down old consoles or cartridges. Remakes are also nice ways of updating old classic games and changing various elements to make them more in line with gaming standards today. That way, newer audiences have a better chance of understanding what made these classics so beloved in the first place. This is one of the most important factors I look at as I add to the collection. When I recommend a video game for people to play, I'd like for them to be able to play it. As much as I'd love to cover more and more classic titles, and I will cover more older games, it can be tough to track down older titles, especially classics from the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 era, or even further. And it can be a struggle for newer gamers to grasp certain abstract concepts, controls, or gameplay mechanics that may have become obsolete. There are ways around this, of course, especially on PC and on emulators. But for the most part, I think a lot of casual audiences and newcomers still aren't familiar with what those are. And it does still lie somewhere within the legal gray zone. The second factor I look at is influence. Did this game have an impact on the gaming landscape as a whole? Within the gaming world, it's very interesting because it can be sometimes very obvious to see when one game copies another. Games like the Star Wars Jedi games are very clearly influenced by the Soulsborne games, and games like Grand Theft Auto 3 had a clear impact on what's now called today open world games. But knowing this can sometimes take time, research, and being around the scene for a while. However, knowing the ideas and elements these games borrow from helps us to appreciate and get better at these games. We can see how certain genres are played, certain conventions that only apply to them, and what separates certain games from the rest of the genre. What's also fun about identifying a game's influence and whether it affected future titles is that we can look back at where it all started and how many of these genre-defining ideas were formed. Getting back to the beginning of an idea helps us trace the evolution of that idea. And sometimes those ideas and concepts have changed drastically, and sometimes not much at all. Some games we can go back to, even though they're 20 or 30 years old, and still enjoy them, just as if they were made today. It's why going back to play games like Street Fighter 2 or Tekken 3 can be so fun. While the visuals may seem dated, the combat, gameplay mechanics, and even the simple premise of letting the player pick their character from a diverse roster can still be seen in games today. We can see how the creators and designers of these games, in some cases, were way ahead of their time. The last element I look at to decide if a game is essential is whether or not the game is actually fun. To some, this might seem like a no-duh kind of an idea, but others might be asking why fun is so important. There are a lot of games that have important cultural value that aren't exactly fun to play. Games like the original Super Mario Bros. Or the original Legend of Zelda can be sometimes frustrating to play and figure out for newcomers. However, newer games also offer interactive experiences that can be sometimes dark, depressing, and not enjoyable to play. There are a lot of people who like The Last of Us Part 2, but even some fans agree it can be a tough game to get through. There is a place for these certain games, of course. Older games that don't conform to modern gaming standards are still important. And so are games that challenge the definition of what it means to be a video game. Not every game has to be bright, cheery, and fun, but I think that when it comes to medium-defining video games, a key aspect of that has to be the game part. Part of what separates games from movies, TV shows, or interactive media is a sense of accomplishment. Games invite players to take part in a story or a journey, and through it, the game asks the player to overcome and grow as a gamer, or even as an individual. Because of that, there's an innate sense of joy and happiness that gets earned and unlocked when someone plays a video game. Again, it's called a game. And if one isn't having fun playing the game, or enjoying the experience of playing it, can it really be called a game? While all of these are simply my thoughts and opinions, I think it also opens up an interesting conversation about video games. What even is a video game? What are the defining characteristics of a video game? And as we go forward, these are questions I like to ponder as well for every video I make talking about gaming essentials. But what are some key elements that you look for when ranking your favorite video games? My name is Jay, and come back again soon for even more on the best that video games have to offer.